Hello, how the tech are you? This is our weekly tech show on Echoplex Media, where we complain about tech stuff in the media. Not really. Sometimes. I like to complain about AI stuff, but I am historian Matt. I usually talk about tech news and science news, and today I got a bunch of tech news, a couple tech news stories. The first one is Stability AI lets artists opt out of Stable Diffusion 3. So this is kind of another in our series on the generative AI generative art. I'll talk about that a little bit. There's some controversy there. And the second one is a new thing for AI, and in this case it's sound recording, but you can make your noisy recordings sound like pro recordings with Adobe, with their new tool. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So the guy with the pink mic, what do you got?
All right. I am HK Perrin, and I'm a software engineer, so I talk about software engineering news. And this week I have a real big one. At least for me, like, this is big effing news. SvelteKit 1.0 came out. And if you are into like web development, you'll definitely want to hear this. Even if you don't use SvelteKit at all, even if you don't use Svelte at all, like, it's big news. And I think it's gonna be probably one of the most liked front end development frameworks, because I've been using it personally and it's really nice. So I'm going to talk about that. Over to the guy with the nice mic.
Yeah, I'm Dave. I'm the producer of this show and all of the shows on Echoplex Media. I'm going to talk about a thirsty Google data center and a man baby banning links to competing websites on his website. Oops.
All right. I don't get a star wipe. Anyways, so my first story is Stability AI lets artists opt out of Stable Diffusion 3. So Stability AI is a company that made the Stable Diffusion, which is the AI program that, everybody's been using to generate images. I don't actually know all the companies that are using it as kind of their back end. But Stability AI now plans to let artists remove their work from training data set for Stable Diffusion 3, the third version, obviously. The current version of Stable Diffusion was learned to generate images from a large data set of images scraped from the internet, and importantly, without permission. And this has been kind of a controversy because they're using it to generate these images. They're actually making money off these images that were, trained. The AI was trained with stuff artists put on the internet that they didn't give permission to do any of this stuff. They're not getting any money for it. Not cool. But now artists can go to the website Have I Been Trained to figure out if their work is in the data set and have it removed. So I'll have a link. The link's already there in the show notes. So check it out if you want to deal with that. But you have to go on.
I'll put it down in the description.
Search
too.
for your images. It seems to be search individually for your images, and then you can mark them as, hey, I want these removed. And lastly, doesn't seem to be any verification process to confirm if the person requested removal of these images actually owns the images in question. So if somebody were to request every image to be removed from the data set, I'm sure that might cause some problems. What do you guys think?
Like critical support to whoever goes in there and finds every image ever and gets it removed from the data set.
Yeah, I think it just like shows all the images. I don't know. I haven't played with it, and I need to see if any of my images are on there, my paintings or stuff. But yeah, I as an artist, I mean, I don't sell that much. I'm not famous or anything, but still, it seems really uncool to use my work without acknowledgement, without payment, and they're making money off of it. It's not cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they're allowing you to request that your work is removed. And as far as like legality goes, I have no idea how this should work. Like, should there be some sort of like, if your stuff is in the training data? Like, should you be compensated for that? I feel like that should be like minimum in terms of like how we proceed legally.
Yeah, I would think that would be required. I think there's some stuff like the European Union has some different thoughts on that. I'm not sure if some of the stuff is actually legal in Europe. And if they're scraping images from people in Europe who've posted online, that could be a big problem. But so far, this is all legal gray area.
Yeah. Like I could imagine someone, having a business where their whole business is, I will collect a bunch of images from a bunch of artists, sell the data sets to, these companies that want to do training, and then pay the artists.
Yeah.
Based on like, what data set they were included. So when you buy a data set, the artists get part of that money.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be maybe the right version. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what about like some of these artists who, have made a name for themselves? They have a particular style, and now these like AIs can basically copy their style, and somebody can put in, make it, an image in the style of such and such artist, and it does a really good job. But now like that artist is basically out of work. Like, should they be compensated for each image that is created in their style?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It seems like they should be more compensated more for that or something. But
yeah, these things
and
are
then
all,
how would we determine like, was the AI basing it on their style when it just created something from a generic prompt?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Obviously, if somebody actually typed in the style of such and such artist, that they definitely should be. Definitely should be some questions there. But
Yeah.
if it's just made something in that style from a prompt that didn't actually mention their name, what do you do? I don't know.
This is gonna. This is all gonna work itself out, I presume, but it's probably gonna work itself out the same way it always works itself out, where like the artist, especially if the artist doesn't have a lot of pull, they're not really gonna, they're gonna get a few cents or whatever, and it's not really gonna impact their bottom line. But the people, that are making money on it are gonna be able to be like, well, we are paying the artists,
right? Like, never mind, they're not even getting like remotely close to living wage,
right? Or even just what their art might be, worth. I don't know. It's gonna be like what Spotify does, essentially. I think it's gonna be in that that range, in that realm, where it'll have to have been used millions of times for you to really see any money.
Right.
Yeah.
Guess we'll find out. I'll move on to my next story here. So the next one is you can make your noisy recordings sound like a pro with Adobe. This is Adobe's new free AI-powered tool that cleans up noisy voice recordings. It's called Adobe Podcast because it's kind of marketed at podcasts. If you make a podcast and you want to clean up the audio and you, for some reason, don't have like these great mics that we have, you can clean it up afterwards. So it's free currently. I suspect it's Adobe, so I'm guessing they're going to charge for it in the future. But for now, all you have to do is have an Adobe account. And I think that's all you have to do, and go to the website. I have a link to the website, Adobe Podcast, in the show notes for anybody who wants to play with it. But it's basically cleaning up sound recording. You can fix up to an hour of audio or up to 1 gigabyte. And I assume it's the lesser of the two, whichever you either hit an hour first or a gigabyte worth file first. You're basically uploading the files to these websites, and it will clean up the audio for you. And it seems to work great. It does a pretty good job, it seems like, most of the time. And some recordings that seem to work better than others. It'll clean up any like background noise. However, with particularly bad recordings, that does seem to have a tendency to hallucinate results. So if you have some really bad noise in the background, it could interpret some of that noise as another person speaking, and it will actually like turn that into audio that it interprets into your add it to your results. But what do you guys think?
I think this is definitely going to become a staple on one of those like Ghost Hunter
Oh yeah,
shows.
Oh God. I'm thinking they're going to shut it down when I start feeding it Madison Star Moon audio from her yelling about the clouds from her car. They're just going to be like, shut it down, shut it down. But, you know, I have to go through a lot of times when I watch Board of Supervisors and city council meetings, a lot of times just because it's regular people, they're not like media trained, they're not mic trained, and they go up and you can hardly hear them and the next person's real loud and whatever. And I do go in a lot and run like a noise gate and compression on that to kind of try to even it out and get rid of some of the background noise. And I'd be curious to see how what this sounds like versus if I go in and do it manually. If this is like putting like, I don't do audio like processing professionally, but people who do, is this going to be a thing that's going to put them out of a job? I'm going to guess no, but yeah. I think that for beginning podcasters or whatever, they're probably going to be inclined to use this versus paying somebody, even somebody just on Fiverr or whatever, is going to end up out of a job. I've had people try to pay me to, you know, do something with their podcast, and then they send me like their audio, and I'm like, I ain't doing that. And this Adobe product isn't going to give them that response. So
yeah. Instead, it'll put like voices that weren't there in the audio.
I think ghosts. That's a lot of fun. That's going to be the fun part, actually, is like, what is Adobe saying to you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't know. I think that the thing about this is that doing this kind of audio processing is like as much art as it is skill. And I don't know if this is if we're there yet to where it's going to be able to clean it up. Because we've already had something like this. If you've ever used something called Levelator, it applies DSP to your audio and tries to kind of even everything out, and it's not great. I have a feeling the Adobe one is going to be better just because it's like web based, so it's going to have a lot more processing power available to it. Plus, as more and more people use it, the data set of like audio that goes in is going to get better. And I didn't read the article, but I presume there's also a way for you to give feedback, like if it did a bad job or whatever. There's probably a thing you can click or whatever. You're like, hey, this didn't do a great job actually. And if that isn't there, it should be.
Yeah. It didn't say in the article, but and there's a lot of speculation of what's going on. It seems to be using the AI to pick out the voices, right? It said the voice frequencies and separate them out from the other frequencies, the noise frequencies. And of course, there's enough noise, it will misinterpret it and stuff.
Well, I mean, it's pretty clearly like making stuff up, right? Because like,
right. So,
you know, you can only do so much with like bad source audio because there's only so much data there. You know, even if you strip out all of the noise, there's still only so much signal. So an AI solution, especially one that's known to hallucinate, is going to be taking what little signal it can get from that and just adding what it thinks is like a reasonable signal that it would expect from input data like that.
Yeah. Right, because the worst background noise is actually when the background noise is in the same frequency range as the voice of someone talking. If the background noise is, you know, like a low rumble, all you need is an EQ to get rid of most of it. Like you don't need advanced signal processing, or if it's like some buzzing or like hissing that's up like high. So where this is going to come in handy, but also where it's most likely to hallucinate is in the bad situations. For example, my voice, if the car window's open and like the buffeting sound is happening, people in a car have a hard time hearing me because the noise fills the same frequency range as my voice. And putting audio like that into there is probably either where it's going to be the most effective or where you'll get the funniest results.
Yeah.
I'll try it out. I'll definitely try it on an hour of a Shasta County Board of Supervisors meeting. Another reason they may shut down the project entirely. Actually, lately it's been Orange County where it's been a little extra turbo. So I'll send them an hour of Orange County and see what they do with it. My other question though, I wonder if when it does it, like if let's say I put the audio, I strip the audio out of video or whatever, send it to them and get the audio back. I wonder if it's going to mess up the audio video sync because of what it's doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume it would send the same length file with the audio in the same spot in the file, as if it stripped it out. But I get the impression that it's not actually stripping out the voice. What it's doing is basically listening to it, interpreting the voice, and then recreating it, right, without the background noise. And that's how you end up with like hallucinations.
Should we put out a second version of this podcast where we put our audio into this thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure our audio is so good, unless you add a bunch of excess noise to it, like it's going to be just fine.
Well, no, but I mean, I think it would be
make
fun.
some background noise.
No, but I mean, I think it would be fun to release it and then the next day release it, what Adobe did with this podcast.
Maybe, yeah.
We could try, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. It's almost no work. We could do it just the audio, not put it up. No, we have to put it up on YouTube too. But I can send the audio to HK. I'll just strip it right out of the video. So all you have to do is replace the audio. I think we're going to do that this week. And it knows we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I think HK, you ready?
Yep. All right. So as I was saying in the intro, this week something really awesome happened. SvelteKit 1.0 came out. This thing has been in development for 2 years. And it is the successor to the aging Sapper framework. Sapper was the first framework made by the same guys who made Svelte, Rich Harris and company. And Sapper was pretty cool, but there was a lot that Sapper was missing. And SvelteKit was basically designed to be a much bigger solution than Sapper to solve a lot more problems. So what SvelteKit provides is URL-based routing from your code's structure. So in other words, your web app, if you go to like /blog/ and then some like date and then / and then a string, your code could have, in the /blog folder, your code could have like a file named slug in like square brackets. And then in that file, SvelteKit will just present that ID as the variable slug, which makes coding, very complicated structures really easy. And with that, you also get server-side rendering. So SvelteKit will render an actual page, just like the page that would be loaded with a front-end framework, and send them the HTML for that page. And then on the client side, the client will do what's called hydrating the structure. Basically, that DOM structure will exist as soon as the page loads, and Svelte will go in there and just kind of attach itself to all these DOM nodes that it should be controlling. And then once that happens, then you can start to do things like navigating on the client side rather than sending another full server request from your browser. And SvelteKit is also really good at code splitting, meaning that when you go to a page, like if you had that blog post page, if you have like another separate page called like /login, none of the stuff from that /login endpoint is going to get to you on that blog page. So all of that code for the blog page is only the code that's necessary for the blog page, which is really cool. And, since I'm working on an email app, a web email app, webmail takes a lot of code, and having, almost instant loading on the inbox is really nice. Another thing it supports is data points and page endpoints. So you can have a data point, like if you have an API, you can just basically forward that data point to your API, or just write that whole API in that data point. And that TypeScript file or JavaScript file that controls that endpoint will get run by SvelteKit when you make a request to that endpoint. So that is, that's really cool to have them in the same code base like that, like right next to each other. You got the page endpoints and the data endpoints, and it keeps your code very well structured and well organized. Another really cool feature, a kind of obvious one, is that all of the page endpoints are written in Svelte. If you've never used Svelte before, if you're using something like React or Vue or Preact or Angular, try Svelte. Svelte is amazing. Like, you will try it and you will fall in love. I used to write Angular JS way back in like 2016, 2017. I was writing Angular JS. I switched to React, and switching from Angular JS to React, it was like, wow, everything is so much better in React. And then when I switched from React to Svelte, it was like, that same feeling of like, wow, everything's so much better, but multiplied by like 10. It is incredible how nice Svelte is. And some of the really cool benefits of SvelteKit is, like I was saying, client-side navigation is all handled in JavaScript. So after that initial server render where your server is delivering the real HTML for the page to the browser, and once the client-side JavaScript hydrates that page, in other words, like loads the JavaScript and attaches itself to all those DOM nodes, then any link that you click, that navigation gets intercepted, and all it does is make like some very small requests and change the parts of the page that it needs to. So that's the kind of stuff that, web apps have been doing that for a long time, but it's really nice to have that just built into the framework, and all you have to do is just write a link. There's not any sort of like advanced tooling that you need. It's just, you just write a link and it just works. And when you have prefetching enabled, which is the default, what that means is when you hover over the link with your mouse, SvelteKit will start the network call to get the data for that page, which means by the time you've actually clicked on that link, chances are SvelteKit is almost done or even done getting the information, and it makes those clicks seem like almost instantaneous. It is crazy how fast you go from a click to the page being rendered in a SvelteKit app, especially for like static content that doesn't need to make like a database query. It is insanely fast, and it's really cool to see. And if you want to see it, you can just go to port87.com, and on there I have like a couple pages. There's like the about page, the contact page, and then the home page, and you can just click between them and watch how fast it changes between those pages. It is incredible. Another really nice thing is that the server-side rendering and the client rendering is all done with the same library and the same code. So even like getting the data to be filled into that code, it's all done with the same code. Like, you can separate them if you need to. If there's some reason you can't run that code on the client and it has to stay on the server, you can separate them. And then what SvelteKit will do is it'll make a call to the server to get the ultimate data that's returned from that. So you can separate it if you need to, but if you don't need to, you can just have everything running on both the server and the client for server-side rendering and client rendering. And it is amazing how well it works and how easy it is. Another really cool feature is that SvelteKit was actually one of the first, I think they were the first framework to adopt Vite. And because of adopting Vite, they now have like really fast hot module reloading during development, which is really nice. Let me tell you, it's like, I'll be writing some code, I'll make a change, and I'll hit Control S, and by the time I've alt tabbed over to the browser, it's already updated on the page. So it is really incredible how fast the development process is with SvelteKit. And it also uses rollup, so you get very small payloads per page. So like I was saying, if your page doesn't use much JS, it'll load instantly. And that time to first meaningful paint with SvelteKit can be incredibly small, especially for something like a login page where you haven't, you're not getting anything from the database. So that return from the server is going to be real fast, and loading that login page probably not going to require much JS. So you're going to have a page in like a fraction of the time that some other server framework would give you. And I've been using SvelteKit since its first public release, way back when it was like, there's been like 300 iterations or 400 iterations during its development. I've been using it since you could count them on two hands, the iteration. So, to see it come to 1.0 is so cool. I'm super excited for it, and I want to give a huge congratulations to Rich, Ben, Simon, Ignatius, Conduitry, and the entire rest of the Svelte team. Awesome work, incredible job. Cheers. Any questions, you guys?
I think you're the only front end engineer here, so
yeah. I'm glad you're excited about it, and I'm glad it's speeding up some of your process on what you're doing. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it would have been much harder to get to the point where I am at Port 87, where now the web app is basically done, and all I'm doing is writing the mobile app now. It would have been much harder to get to that point without something like SvelteKit. SvelteKit makes the development so much easier. It is such a cool project.
Nice.
Very nice. Well, I guess it's my turn. People don't think about this a lot, but data centers, they not only use a lot of electricity, they use a lot of water. They use a lot of water to cool the data center. Most of the large data centers, they use water cooling, not air cooling, because at some point, it's going to get so hot in the data center that the air cooling stops being efficient, and the water just works better for that. The problem is Google is using 1/4 of all water used in a city called the Dalles in Oregon, and they weren't going to disclose this, but a local media outlet had a big battle sort of with the city to try to get this information, and sort of as a result of this battle, it was a battle in the courts. Google has disclosed how much water their data centers, I think all of their data centers, are consuming. And it's just kind of stunning, actually, that 1/4 of all the water consumed in some city is consumed by a bunch of computers that are serving you data. I mean, I guess this is sort of what happens when the data centers move out of the big cities into like smaller towns. But then like if there's a drought in that small town, it just seems like the data center is going to get priority on the water versus other people who need it that aren't data centers. And I was just kind of wondering, like, up in Oregon, it rains a lot, so maybe this isn't a problem, but it isn't a problem until it becomes one. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Well, my first question that I don't understand is, why is, even if you're using it for cooling, why is it using the water? Like, I thought that would be recycled.
I can tell you exactly why.
What?
I can tell you exactly why.
Are they just releasing the steam that's created or something?
So if it's built like Facebook's data centers, which I assume it is, because Facebook made a lot of their data center design stuff open source, and a lot of data centers have started using it. And it's good, to be clear. It uses a lot less electricity this way, but it does use a lot of water. Basically, the way they do it, back when I worked at Facebook, I toured one of their data centers in Prineville, Oregon. So I don't know how close that is to the Dalles, but it's probably a very similar data center design. Basically, what they do is, on one side of the data center, they have an air intake, right? Basically, for like several hundred feet, they have fans that intake air from outside. And then they have misters, like those misters when you're sitting out on a hot day, and they might be running these misters out in the public area to keep you cool. Very similar to that, just misters blowing water into the air to make the air humid. And then that air gets fed down into the cold aisles. That humid air gets fed down into the cold aisles, which are separated from the hot aisles. So in a data center, it goes, cold aisle, then hot aisle, then cold aisle, and there's complete separation in between them with like solid walls. And then every row of the cold aisle has servers facing you on both sides. And the servers take air in from that cold row, the air that comes from outside that's been misted, takes air in from that cold row and blows through the computer into the hot aisle. And those hot aisles then take that hot air, blow it with fans up to basically where it gets funneled into the exhaust. So now it's hot after collecting all the heat from inside the servers. And then they blow that air out into the atmosphere. So that's why it uses up water, because they never get the chance to regain that water. That water is only there to collect heat.
So it's not like, I think Matt was thinking that they were using systems more like you might use like liquid cooling for your PC, but that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not like a closed loop system. It's not like, you have these water reservoirs. They're just blowing water into the air that they use for air cooling.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that would explain why they're using a lot of water.
Right.
Yep.
You'd think that maybe if this becomes a problem, they might start using closed loop systems. But then, closed loop systems present a lot of problems as far as maintaining the servers. Maintaining one PC with a closed loop water system is one thing, but having a bunch of, even if it's if it's one giant system that goes through all the servers, that's a nightmare. And if you have a closed loop system in every server, and like every server in the rack, now you have one more thing for the server techs to have to worry about. And I can see why they wouldn't want to do that. Because then if something fails, maybe on the top of the rack, now there's water everywhere.
Yeah, that would be awful.
That's bad. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess they probably look for places with heavy rainfall. That's probably one of their, they want heavy rainfall and generally cooler temperatures. That's why these are in Oregon and not Phoenix, So,
yep.
But I don't know, that's bad. I think that, it was kind of crappy that Google and the city were sort of in cahoots to not let the residents of the city know what was going on there. And I'm glad that, again, stuff always gets broken by local news, right? Well, local news took care of it. So, just maybe if you live in a place and you have the means and you're interested, subscribe to your local paper, have it delivered to your house every day, because they're the ones hitting up stories like this. It's not your Facebook feed generally. And by the time it hits your Facebook feed, it's probably two truths and a lie. So I got one more story, and we got more Twitter. Apparently, Twitter abruptly bans links to all Instagram, Mastodon, Facebook, and other competitors. But then, as has been the case, once people were like, well, this is stupid, apparently they seemingly reversed the decision from an apology with Elon Musk. They did it within 48 hours. And it's seems a little weird. And I think it had something to do with people sharing links to that Elon's Jet account on Mastodon. And I made a decision this week not to get into any of that on any of the shows. There's a lot of good reporting on that. You can check out Casey Newton's podcast called Hard Fork. They got into it and they did a really good job on it. But it just seems like whenever anything goes wrong, I don't know what went wrong there. The guy kicked off somebody who was using publicly available data about his jet. I hate when people track my jet, by the way. Pisses me off.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But then instead of I don't know, instead of doing something else, the guy's just like, well, let's just not allow links to any other social media site. And it's like, well, that's not how the web works, dude. The web is supposed to work the other way.
It's how the web can work on Twitter if that's what Elon wants. He bought it and he owns it.
I just have a feeling that his phone started ringing from the Meta company, and the Meta company was like, hey, we have some information on how many times people link to tweets. that on our websites. And, you know, it'd be a shame if something happened to that.
Right.
Yeah. I think it shows that Elon's kind of worried about people leaving Twitter, which is a good thing. You should be leaving Twitter. Like, if you're not already off Twitter, you should be leaving Twitter, or at least have a plan to leave, because it's not going to get better.
The other, like, the thing that kind of sucks is, like, if you're doing what I'm doing, like trying to do media in any way, shape, or form, until something just awful happens and everyone in mass is like, we're out of here. You know, I can't not be there. People who report on things like QAnon or extremism can't not be on Twitter. That's where you're going to get your information out to other people in that ecosphere. And I think a lot of reporting about Elon Musk and Twitter and Tesla happens on Twitter. Like, a lot of the negative reporting, a lot of the bad stuff we learned about, you know, I've learned about Tesla particularly. I've learned from Twitter. You know, I learned that Elon, who, when he bought the company, was complaining about all the bots, used networks of bots to pump up the Twitter stock and pump up certain cryptocurrencies. And I learned that on Twitter, where the bots were. And, like, I'm just really concerned that, you know, a lot of the people in media are sort of the target of this guy. And as they tried to move to Mastodon, or are some of them are on Mastodon. Shout out to all the people on the Dystopia Beat that I've been able to find on Mastodon.
And if you want a whole list of journalists on Mastodon, we have that.
Yeah, that's and there's all kinds of things available. There's tools you can use to find out. You can punch in your Twitter account and be like, who am I following? And then it will find them. If there's anything the tools actually work really well. But I mean, getting rid of links to Instagram on Twitter, like, Instagram isn't really your competitor, Elon. Like, maybe Facebook is, but Instagram isn't. Instagram is like just pictures.
Well, Mastodon definitely is. So I feel like, you know, if he was going to block Mastodon, if he blocked just Mastodon specifically, that would be a real bad look. So maybe he blocked Mastodon plus some others thrown in there. Because, you know, Mastodon is the biggest threat to Twitter right now.
Yeah, because you don't ever hear about anybody going, screw this, I'm going to Facebook.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's real fun.
I've been really happy to see all of the journalists on Mastodon recently. Like, some really high profile journalists on Mastodon, you know, breaking news on Mastodon, which is awesome. You love to see it.
You love to see it. And the other good thing about that is, if it's the one thing I like most about it is if it's like purely political news, a lot of people put that content warning on it. So if you're not interested in like purely political news, you just don't click through and then you don't see it. And I think that that's like a super responsible thing that a lot of people are doing. Of note, he didn't ban like links to any of the things that Peter Thiel's working on, or any of the things that Mark Andreessen is working on, you know, for whatever reason.
Wonder why.
For whatever reason. So, I mean, that's my story. I don't know. I feel like, you know, it's going to come up again. It's going to come up more and more, but I also feel like, you know, there are a lot of people are doing a really good job, and you know, maybe we'll try not to lean so hard on what's going on Twitter on this show, because, you know, there's just other people that have better information, and some people even have access to the man himself to get him to say something stupid on the record, and we certainly don't have that. So I guess that's the show. I think, Matt, is it your turn to read us out this week?
Oh, am I reading out? Okay.
I think it's your turn. I don't know.
I think you should mention our Mastodon instance. I'm going to put my hands up, and maybe I can put a link to it. Port87.social right here.
All right.
Video editing is your passion.
So that is our show for this today, whatever we're doing. And if you want to, again, we're on Echoplex Media, is our network, and you can find out more about Echoplex Media on echoplexmedia.com. And we got some live shows that go out on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. Well, it's almost always going, so you check it out anytime there's something going on. And finally, please give us money. Patreon.com/Echoplex. We love money. It's great. It really helps us out. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Just thanks.
Just thanks.